Hello, Goobers! It's me, your favorite Goober, and I am here to talk about that character that I mentioned yesterday for Project Fear. Now, one thing I want to disclose, and one thing I want you to keep in mind, is this character was actually a character concept that I had not revealed at all, but I had them a while ago. And since then, it has been, admittedly, like I said, it's been a while. And because of that, there's been a lot of work done on Project Fear, so much so that I haven't necessarily figured out the best way to fit him in with all the newly established, rules and details. So view this character in a bit of a vacuum because he has not been modernized. I think is the best word to describe it. He has not been modernized just yet, so keep that in mind. I gave you all a hint though yesterday. I said the fourth wall. Now, one of you were close, very close. I will admit. The truth is, the character is afraid that he's in a story. Bit ironic, because he is in a story. And the part uh, that is really wacky is that he would be able to, like, manipulate the pages. Literally. It would be this kind of reality manipulation, I suppose. And the original concept was just this idea that a character knew of my existence, like literally the author, genuinely my existence, and had conversations with me. But it got a little weird when I took the time to think about it, because as an author, I would be creating this character, making him do every action, making him say everything, every word he speaks to me. I wrote every action he ever does. I wrote everything I do. So him talking to me, I made him do. Him being afraid of me, I made him afraid of that. As the author, that's just how it works. I'm creating a character. I made him. And so thinking about that was just like, whoa, good lord, right? And a little mind bending, I suppose. But I didn't can the idea entirely because the point of Project Fear was to have some pretty wacky powers, and this would be an exploration in a pretty insane power, I'd have to say. It is gnarly, to say the least. The ability to basically change the page you're on into something different would be cool, I think. And the rule of cool is always a nice thing to have, but you gotta. I like for there to be a fundamental logic. That's why I care so much about creating power systems with logic and the capacity to be understood and studied. So I've uh I've been really trying to be a little more free though with Project Fear, as that was the intended uh, route, I should say, with Project Fear. It was born from this idea of if I had a power system that was wacky, that didn't have this like super duper like strict, uh, I guess, system. Because Project Elemental, the other series that I have developed quite a bit of actually, um, there's it's still work in progress as every one of my projects are, but Project Elemental's power system was much more simpler, very contained. It wasn't wacky. You're not going to get random powers that can just do things, right? Imagine JoJo stands, or imagine, Chainsaw Man's like devils, right? You're not going to get these like random out there powers with Project Elemental. There's 6 elements, and there's a lot that you can do with them. Don't get me wrong. Trust me, I've had a blast developing fighting styles and all that kind of stuff. But the problem is that it's pretty rigid. It's very logical and it's not very free, I suppose. And so Project fear was born out of this idea of like, what can I do with a power system that's a little less careful with everything? And, you know, what if I just kind of let things be fun, be random, be goofy, right? There's a guy who's afraid of not knowing what's behind a door, and his power is summoning doors that kind of act as portals, right? He can go into like a pocket dimension of his own, and he's got like these portal doors. It's pretty cool, right? And door portals, and that's his only power. There's not like a logic where it's like, oh, this dimension is, you know, a staple across all. Like, no, it's literally his own personal pocket dimension and his own power. And then you got some other person who's afraid of the moon. She can manifest this lunar dust, right? I'm blanking on the name, but it's the surface of the moon. It's got a certain name to it. Sorry, I'm like trying to remember it. I'm blanking on it. I'll move on. But the point is, you know, literally breaking the laws of physics for both of these. You know, summoning matter and literally just like, oh, it exists now. So we are meant to have a little fun. And this character, to get back on track with the topic of the video, it is an exploration in that. And like, how wacky can I get? And I was like, what if a character just knew that I existed? What would that be like? And then, like I said, it got weird because I put some thought into it, right? I already went over that. So, you know, that's kind of where I landed. But then last night, I had an idea, and I thought it was pretty cool. So for the character, I had an idea for what I might do with his personality. I was thinking I was going to make him a more timid individual, definitely not one to make drastic decisions so easily. Somebody who doesn't want to use their power. Like I said, I haven't modernized him. My initial idea is that maybe the monster could be this author that he talks to for this, and then, you know, if he overcame it, maybe he could like have a little more control over his story, right? But he'd be super timid, and him gaining control of his, you know, monster would be really uh, opening to what his potential could be, right? And so you have the personality. You know, he's not going to be somebody who's just like gung ho. He's going to be someone that takes a while to, I would say, develop. And once he finally defeats his monster, he's going to probably have some access to some insane strength, you know, and that's pretty cool. But another limitation, because he's literally rewriting the pages he's in, could be that he has this ink. And I just realized I didn't display that. Here. Let's see what I can come up with on the spot. Let's, okay, we'll do this. Right, so let's say he's got like some ink meter. This will be our meter to display that. So as you can see, you know, he's got this level of ink. And the more he uses the power, more ink he's gonna take up. Now, I haven't decided if I want him to go ahead and have the ability to replenish his ink. You know, just like every life is eventually going to end, I feel like your ink eventually ends too, you know? Like, imagine if you were to read a manga from start to finish, right? Obviously, it's been printed probably millions of times. There's a bajillion copies of this out there. But imagine just looking at your collection of a series, book one all the way to, like, we'll say it's a 10-book series, right? You got all the cool special editions, so it's like 10 books, and it's got the whole series. If you were to extract the ink of a single character, every word they speak, every image of them, if you were to extract the ink, there would be a limited quantity of ink in that series for that character. Sure, like I said, it's been printed God knows how many times. That's not the point. We're looking in a bubble at your own collection, how much ink was used to print everything related to this character, from them as a character and like their speech bubbles, basically those two things. Right? There's a limited amount of ink within your collection that was used to display the character. And so imagine if you were tapping into that reserve. And if you used it all up, you wouldn't be a part of the series anymore. You'd be erased. I had this idea for the series. It would be pretty major. As you can see, you have an original series and you have the retcon series. So the original series, he exists. This is it right here. This is just how everything is written. This would be like, you know, however long this takes for me to get to this point. And then we would have the character reach a major sacrifice. And this is when he uses all his ink on like a single big moment. We're talking like rewriting the entire series up to this point, but he's gone afterwards because he uses all his ink. And since he doesn't have any more ink, he's no longer a part of the series. He's canon. All of this is canon. However, I would do a re-release where it would be the retcon series, be a special edition, so you can, it's a great way to get more money out of my devout followers because I will be very greedy. No, it would be a cool thing though, and it would make me more money, but I'm not doing this just because there's a chance to make more money. I'm doing this because I think it'd be cool for the series. Just so happens to, work. But this is the canon version of the series, so if somebody were to pick it up, and they only bought this version and they didn't know about the pre-version of the series, the original, then they would never know about this character. However, this would be all canon. And it's a lot of work on my end too, because I have to take all of this, which, I don't really know how much of the story he'd be in, but let's say it takes a while to get here, right? And he just does his magic. I'd have to rewrite the entire series without him, without any of the outcomes changing, because everything that happens up to this point isn't going to be like a new history, a new, oh, the characters never did this actually. And if I needed to go back and actually retcon something, this is my biggest chance to do it. Don't get me wrong. But like, let's assume I'm very satisfied with all the story beats. The point is he'd rewrite everything up into whatever moment needed to change. So maybe somebody killed like almost the entire major cast, and he makes his final bid to rewrite that and bring them all back to life and change the story permanently. But he's gone, right? Boom. This is that universe where everything stayed the same, but now it's different. He's gone from the entire series. He's a part of it all the way through here, and then he sacrifices himself and it goes on. But then I would release a special edition where you get to see the whole series and what it's like without him being there. So I thought that could be pretty cool, but I don't know. It's just a concept, just an idea. Like he never existed now. He's been retconned, and he's just gone. Just like that. The story goes on, but it's like he was never there, and then I would release special edition to show the story of what it's like with him not being there. Maybe he made a big moment and he saved somebody right here, but he's gone now, and while they still win, the outcome is still the same. The character development is still the same. It just plays out just enough differently so that way the character can move on without having ever been affected or saved by our lovely Goober here. I thought it could be interesting. I definitely think there is some level of workability, if I had to find a word to describe it. I do think that it's a unique concept, but I don't know. use the top bar here. Oh, he has this major sacrifice right there. We'll say. We'll say this major sacrifice right there. Just realized those lined up perfectly. 3, 3. That's nice. And then down here, he wouldn't exist. There's no ink for him. Yeah. So just like that, he's gone. And I guess kind of everything. There really isn't that much developed for him. There's a lot of details, a lot of fine work to be done on him. But I wanted to just bring up the concept in general. So I'm sorry if I maybe talked in circles or whatnot. But that's kind of just the base idea for this character. I thought it was pretty cool. And I hope he is interesting to think about. He's not canon to the story just yet. But I do think it could be interesting to pursue something like this. But for now, that is everything. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. I will see you all tomorrow. Good night and good luck. Bye-bye.